This morning, you are going to hear a powerful story that, as redemptive as it ends, like most good stories, there's a pretty deep valley. This is a story that deals with life itself, the giving of life and the taking of life. That may not directly relate to very many of us, although I'm guessing Lisa, who's going to share her story this morning, is probably not the only one who has the life experience that she's going to tell us about. I am certain that all of us know what it's like to be guilty of sin and then wrestle with coming into the light. There's something about fallen human nature that when we sin, especially when it's grievous in our own estimation or severe in our own estimation, we do what Adam and Eve did in the garden. First we try to cover it up, we try to fix it ourselves, and we hide from God. But God, in his love, not just to his children, but God in his love for all, calls people to come to the light, especially if you are a child. The Spirit in you calls you to come back to the light, to know freedom and wholeness and joy again. So would you join me in welcoming Lisa Whitehill to the stage? I think Ryan is helping me realize I didn't bring a microphone. This seat is for you. Lisa's just going to have to yell really loud because I didn't bring a microphone. Oh, did you have the microphone? Oh, my son. Come on, buddy. Gah. Thank you, Ryan. As an aside, could we just say thank you to our tech team and those who have helped lead worship this morning? Our tech team does a wonderful job, except normally the only time we ever bring attention to them is when I or others make a mistake, and then they have to fix it. All right. So Lisa is going to share, she's going to read her story to you first, and then we'll talk about what she shares. So thank you, Lisa.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Whitehill. My husband and I are originally from Pennsylvania. We moved to Ohio after we married. We moved from Clinton to Wadsworth a little over 4 years ago, and I began attending here at the chapel and became a member a little over a year ago. My story begins early and involves my 3 siblings, my sister Sue, who is 14 years older, my best friend, and my idol. My brother Billy, who was 12 years older, and who was chronically sick with kidney disease. My brother Scott, who was 7 years older and often my bratty brother. My mom took care of Billy, who was often in the hospital, and my dad worked in a steel mill and was a city councilman with aspirations of becoming mayor. When I was almost 4, my brother Billy died, and my sister Sue left for college with home visits, few and far between. My mother started working various jobs to ease her pain of Billy's death. When I was 10, my sister moved to California to stay forever. Fast forward to the beginning of my sophomore year of high school, when I caught the attention of a senior, a nice young man whom my father approved of. I fell in love with whom I thought was the love of my life. After going steady for about 5 months, he convinced me to give him my virginity. Although I was raised to be a good girl, and I knew there should not be sex until marriage, I loved him, and it seemed okay because I knew we were going to be together always. However, before my junior year, the love of my life broke up with me. He said he didn't want to keep me strapped down during my last 2 years of school. I was devastated. I felt ruined, dirty, used, and thought no one else would ever want me because I wasn't pure anymore. I began going to parties every weekend, drinking, flirting, teasing, Trying to make other boys hurt like I hurt became my game. My game became even more harmful as I started having sex with some, and at the end of my senior year, I was pregnant. I was in a panic when I saw that pregnancy test positive. I prayed and prayed that God would take the pregnancy away. Please, God, don't let it be true. I didn't know what to do. There was no one I could talk to. I didn't know who the father was. I couldn't even tell either of the two it could have been. I couldn't face the rejection. I called my sister and told her my best friend was pregnant. My sister encouraged my bestie to talk to her parents, and then said abortion was legal and could be found in the yellow pages. I began to formulate a plan of stealing money from my mom, buying a bus ticket to Erie, having the procedure done, and returning on the bus, and no one would ever know that I was not a good girl. The morning of the procedure arrived, and I had no money, no bus ticket, but I did have an appointment. I decided to tell my mother about the pregnancy, my plans, my appointment, and the need to get to Erie and get it done because I was running out of time. My mom and dad drove me to Erie and sat in the waiting room. I don't believe my dad knew what was going on, just that I needed to see this doctor in Erie. We never talked about it. I remember the nurse asking me, "Are you sure you want this?" And I said yes, and the procedure was done. My shame and guilt, feelings of ruin continued to grow within me. Not long after the abortion, while still seniors in high school, my husband and I began dating. Once again, I fell in love, and this time it was for keeps. I wanted to tell him about my abortion before we married, but at a party, he joined others in making fun of a classmate who had had an abortion. When I heard this, I decided it would be my secret, one I would never tell. 4 years later, we were married and were now expecting our first baby. We attended childbirth classes near the end of the pregnancy. It was at one of these meetings that I believed my secret would be exposed, so I decided it would be better for my husband to hear the truth from me then, rather than in the delivery room. When I told him later that evening, it was awful. I hurt him terribly, and he said that if I hadn't been pregnant, he would have left me. I wept lonely, pain-filled tears that night, and it was not talked about again. Many years passed. A couple of times I would gain the courage to ask my husband if he had forgiven me, and each time I was told no. It was during this time my walk with the Lord grew stronger, and I knew as a Christian I was forgiven, but my worship was broken. There was a barrier or an emptiness between us. A desire to help other women who had either made the choice of abortion or those who were in crisis and needed counsel also grew. 40 years after the abortion, I went through my first post-abortive Bible study. I didn't feel I needed this study because I knew the Lord had forgiven me, but it was required before I could be a client advocate. And an added bonus was I could learn to perform ultrasounds. It was during this study that I was finally able to accept the Lord's forgiveness, and my worship was being restored. I have even become grateful for my husband's unforgiveness. I believe God used it in my healing journey, which continues. Recently, the Lord showed me why my husband had trouble forgiving me. I've also recognized and learned to face my fears of abandonment. I have been able to forgive my mother, who chose to listen to a 17-year-old girl instead of encouraging me to slow down, to offer love, to offer support, to offer counsel. I have had the honor to serve women and men for the past 3 years in a pregnancy center where I drove a huge mobile unit and was able to share the gospel, show life through ultrasound, and encourage women to just slow down and talk with those who understand the crisis they are in. I also was honored to walk with women in healing Bible studies. In May of this year, the Lord brought me to another ministry. The executive director at Akron Pregnancy Services asked me to become their Hope and Healing coordinator. I am able to encourage others in the healing I have received from my sweet Lord. Through helping others to heal, I continue to heal. Recently, the Lord showed me when I was 17, I really wasn't afraid of being pregnant or damaging my family's reputation, which is what I really thought. But rather, I didn't think I had anyone to love me through it. I couldn't see the Lord reaching out to hold me, to walk with me, to love me then. He was there then, and he is there here now.
Thank you, Lisa. Lisa and I think we had this conversation for the first time more than a year ago, some time ago, and so I'm going to ask Lisa some follow-up questions that I think are probably some of the questions that many of you have. Just want to affirm Lisa for a moment, just to make explicit what I think probably many of us are thinking. To have the courage and enough healing to take this step is a powerful testimony. I mean, is really a demonstration of faith and courage that says, if what God says is true about me, I am forgiven, then I can risk sitting before a room full of people and telling them the deepest, darkest, most wicked thing about me, because God loves me and he's forgiven me. So this is a wonderful example, this kind of courage and humility. So thank you for being willing to share. So Lisa's not going to be surprised by the questions I'm asking, because some of these are pretty direct and kind of weighty, and I don't want you imagining that she's hearing them for the first time now. So at what point, Lisa, in having the abortion, at what point did you feel guilty, confess to God, ask him to forgive you? When did that happen?
So I don't know why, but I do feel like I'm hearing this for the first time. My initial reaction was relief. Mm-hmm. I felt relief that the problem was solved, the problem was gone. I was able to hide it successfully. And as far as knowing that it was a bad choice, a wrong choice, that happened when I began having sex as a sophomore. That shame and guilt. Yeah. And then when it was rejected as a junior, it hit me full force, and just continued to spiral.
Yeah. I appreciate your honesty about a feeling of relief, because it would probably be easier in a room like this to just say, I knew before I did it I was wrong. I immediately felt horrible. The truth is the truth, and there is a sense of relief. Many of you could affirm sinful, foolish choices you've made. You believed a very similar lie. The evil one would have us believe it's easier, better, safer to not tell the truth, to make a poor decision. You brought a little bit of this out in your story, with your brother's death when you were young, with your sister who was like a rock for you, going away to school, moving away forever, your mom after your brother died, giving extra time and attention to work for her own grief. You were feeling, you have words for it now, kind of isolated and kind of abandoned. So then when you begin giving yourself sexually to a man you thought would be your husband, and then he rejects you, what was it like to be feeling that kind of rejection? I mean, as you look back in the moment, you don't see it as clearly, but looking back, what was it like to feel that kind of push away, like you offer yourself to someone and then they push you away?
I was devastated. I would walk through the halls crying. I couldn't believe it. Rejection's an awful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For those of you, especially those of you who are younger, but also if you're raising children, Lisa believed a vicious lie that somehow we are born with purity, and that then you can break that purity as though we have it in the first place, which we do not. And when we have it, it's like some kind of fine white vase that then can be shattered and never believably put back together again. We do well to understand that we are born impure. God's call for us is to pursue sexual integrity. So sex outside of marriage is a horrible idea and sinful, as are all kinds of sexual immorality. But it's not like we had purity sitting on a beautifully well-lit cabinet that can get shattered and never put back together. So you're experiencing incredible rejection at this time in high school, and then in that hurt, so people often use the phrase, hurt people hurt people. So you're feeling relief after the abortion, but you're also at the same time feeling guilt from knowing you've already done giving yourself sexually what you shouldn't have done, like you ruined it, you broke it. And yet you knew you were a child of God. So it's like you had this sin and your relationship with God. How did you reconcile those together? What was that like?
I didn't. God, my relationship with God, I knew that I was his child. I knew that I loved him, that he loved me, but I kept him over here, and my sinful ways were over here, and they weren't supposed to crisscross, you know. And I am like the Israelites going through the desert. It took me 40 years to be able to succumb to his draw. He was drawing me in all those years.
Yeah. Help us to appreciate, because 40 years is a long time. Help us appreciate a little bit what it was like with the Lord to, I know you love me and forgive me, kind of, but I'm not super sure. What was it like at points along the way to have, I think you called it broken worship. It's almost like a love-hate relationship with God. Draw near, pull away. What were some of their particular experiences, or just help us appreciate what it was like to live under that kind of cloud of hiding and shame?
This is a new question. And
Was it a good one? Was it a okay question? Okay.
Yeah. All I can think of is that he just kept working on me. He just kept changing me. I'm not the same girl that I was I was mean. I could say really hateful things. But I did it out of pain. You know, it came out of pain.
Yeah.
And I don't have that pain anymore.
Yeah.
I have accepted his forgiveness. I have accepted that he truly does forgive me.
When you first told me this story, I imagine many of you, when you heard Lisa say she went to her husband to confess this and to ask him to forgive her, and he said no. I mean, were you like, are you kidding me? How is that even possible? I was mad when I heard that the first time. That doesn't even seem possible. And yet, it was. You said, even more remarkably, that you came over time to become grateful for your husband's unwillingness to forgive you. How did that happen? Like, what have you come to understand about that has led you to be grateful for it?
I think that it helped to move me closer to the Lord, that I could feel I didn't have my husband's acceptance, but the Lord kept pulling me to his acceptance. He used it. He used it to bring me to him. I am fully convinced of that.
Yeah. To help us not all want to beat your husband up.
Sorry.
He did come in time to be able to forgive you, didn't he?
He did. He did. And in one of the last studies I went through, and knowing that we were going to talk about this, and you asking me, well, how come he didn't forgive you? And I didn't know. It was blocked. I didn't know why. And within the last month, I had a dream, and the Lord took me back to that night. And he was happy. We just came back from that childbirth class, and he was expecting his first baby. He was on cloud 9, and I tell him my garbage and dump this abortion on him, wounding his heart. He thought he knew he wasn't my first lover, but he thought he was going to be the first father. And I didn't stop there, though. I took his wounded heart, and I continued to tell him about all of my indiscretions, every one of them. And the Lord gave me a visual of taking his wounded heart and having a handful of crushed glass and smashing that into his heart and then stamping on it. And I thought, no wonder he couldn't forgive me.
Yeah.
No wonder after all this time he couldn't forgive. I had wounded him that hard, that deeply. He has told me numerous times now that he has forgiven me. But I think it's because he has seen a change in me. Like I said, I'm not the same person I used to be.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So 40-ish years of your own little secret shared with very few others. You are wanting to volunteer at Akron Pregnancy Services, and in the application process, you disclose that you have had an abortion. So as part of the training process to help women and do ultrasounds, to help women who are in unexpected pregnancies, they told you needed to go through this healing Bible study, and you weren't really interested.
No, I didn't think I needed it.
Which
really
is kind of funny. That is kind of
It's
funny.
kind of funny, yeah. Well, because I knew that I had been forgiven. But
Yeah.
in going through this healing Bible study, it was really life-changing. It really was. I was able to validate this life that I'd snuffed out. I was able to have a memorial service. I was able to name the baby. I was able to love the baby. I'm a mother of 4, not a mother of 3.
Yeah.
There's a baby in heaven waiting that I long to hold.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's baby, but I still long to hold him.
What is his name?
His name is Jeremiah Daniel.
So this is what Lisa's going to share with us is the process by which the Lord helped her actually become convinced, like in the depth of her being, that she was forgiven. You know, it's relatively easy, many of you can relate to this, to not fully embrace who God says you are, or that you're actually forgiven. It's like your head knows it, you'd answer it right on a test, but then your hiding is evidence, your lack of joy is evidence that you haven't fully become convinced that you're forgiven. Now, sometimes people talk about this as an inability to forgive yourself. I don't think that's accurate or very helpful. It really is an issue of embracing God's forgiveness. One, your sin is not first against yourself. I don't know that you even have the ability to forgive yourself. I think that's ways that people try to describe the same reality. So you already mentioned one of the ways that God helped you believe that you were forgiven is like validating Jeremiah's life. So you gave him a name. Tell us a little bit about, you had a memorial service for him. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
So the memorial service is much like a church service. We start out with worship, and then there is our candles that represent our children, and we light those candles from the Christ candle. After lighting the candles, there is a balloon release where it is a symbol of us releasing our child to God. It's just a beautiful ceremony of validating that child.
You had a really meaningful experience with your mom.
I did.
What was that experience?
So as a memorial for my son, I chose to plant a tree. And I chose an aspen cedar, which I thought was appropriate, a tall child of God. And my mom came to live with us when she was 87. And so this was 5 years ago. Anyway, so she would have been in her 90s 92, 93. And she helped me to plant the tree. She helped to cover the root ball. She got down on her hands and knees. And she cried tears too. Happy tears. Because she has another grandson.
So these healing studies that Lisa is referring to is work that she now, in a new role at Akron Pregnancy, as the Hope and Healing Coordinator, has an opportunity to help other women and men experience. So there's some information on the screen behind me. You can find the same information at the welcome desk or in the ladies' restroom. Lisa would love to help any other woman or man. It's not always just women. I've learned that from Lisa, that carry guilt and shame from abortion. If you would like to take a step or have a best friend who might need to take a step, Lisa would love for you to reach out to her in any way. There are regular opportunities at different times to go through this similar kind of process. What else about help us understand a little bit more about the Bible study. Did you do this by yourself or with a group? Is this like a 3-day thing, a 6-week? Help us understand a little bit about it.
So the Bible study that we have at Akron Pregnancy Services is called Portraits. It is Bible-based. It is 8 weeks long. We might do 9 weeks if we have an introductory day. But we can do one-on-one. We can go up to a group of 4. Getting more people at one time. People don't get to tell as much as their story. I feel that they need to be able to express their anger. They need to express forgiveness. They need to be listened to and have people validate their babies too.
Yeah. So this process has changed you.
Yes.
What are some of the greatest blessings over the past couple of years that you have come to experience, knowing at the depth of your being that you are forgiven?
I love better. I love more deeply. I love that I've been given the opportunity to share my pain that I know others feel too. And I don't fight the same way. I'm strictly above the belt. I'm filled with joy. Joy it's my story, but it's for His glory.
Absolutely. Could we say thank you to Lisa for her willingness to share? Thank you. Will you pray with me, please?